Okay, good evening, everybody. My name's Jim Wades. I'm board chair for Radio Relay International, and I would like to thank everybody for being here. Looks like we have 69 participants tonight, and so we allowed a little extra time for people to show up. So I'm going to dig right into the program this evening. What we're going to present to you tonight is a possible path forward for some changes to how Radio Relay International operates. These things are not cast in stone. So in other words, we're presenting to you a vision, a plan, you might say. We feel it has a lot of value, but you, the supporters of RRI, are the stakeholders, and we want you to see it and discuss it and offer your insight. And you may say, hey, this is a great plan, and go for it. Or you might say, change this or change that. Or maybe one of you will tell us to get lost. But I mean, for the most part, this plan kind of has evolved over a period of almost a year now, of thought and consideration and some discussion. And it's, I think, a good plan for going forward in the current operational and political environment. This plan is intended to be constructive. It's intended to be something that is beneficial to the MCOM community, the traffic community, and amateur radio in general. But it's also something we feel is necessary to facilitate growth, evolution, and change in how we do business so we can remain relevant and we can provide a service that is of a high level. We're all amateurs, of course, but nonetheless, it provides an opportunity to essentially structure our programs so that we can provide a high quality of professional grade service as a message transfer and handling organization, or a traffic handling organization. So I'm going to dig right into this, and we'll get started. So let me share my screen, and let's see, there's that, slideshow from beginning. Let me get this stuff off my screen too. I know there's some way to get rid of this thing. Let's see. Now, let's stick it up here in the corner and get rid of that.
We can't see it, Jim.
Oh, you can't see it. Perfect. Okay, I'm glad you can. Okay. It goes to show what I know about Zoom. Anyway, this is entitled Moving RRI Forward. And what we're looking at is maybe not so much a new path, but a modified path that recognizes some of the shortcomings that we've identified in how we've done business in the past. And also the operational, addresses some shortcomings in our operational environment. So here we go. So here's some ground rules before we start. As we've learned in a couple of Rat Pack presentations, people can get a little bit emotional. Sometimes they're so deeply invested in things that maybe they get a little too strident. We can all do that. I'm not innocent of it. So the ground rules basically are we want to exercise courtesy at all time. We're looking for constructive criticism, while avoiding negativism. We value your opinion. That's exactly the reason we had scheduled this meeting. And if you do offer criticism, we ask that you offer also solutions, right? So maybe there's something you don't like about the plan, or there's something you feel should be changed. Let us know what you believe a suitable solution would be. And I think the most important thing is we're going to touch on some things that may trigger what's commonly called cognitive dissonance. There's a certain way that we've done things for decades. And as a result, there's a tendency in some of us, I don't know who those people are, but it's human nature. There's a tendency for some of us to want to maintain the status quo. We become uncomfortable with change, particularly as we age. Sometimes when ideas challenge our comfort zone, we tend to push back. But I want to stress that, at least speaking only from my own opinion, I believe an open mind and overcoming cognitive dissonance is essential to problem solving and evolution. There's a reason once great corporations are no longer with us, the Western Union Telegraph companies and the boroughs and national cash registers and American Standard and so on and so on. We could go down the list. The plan here has a lot of moving pieces. So we're going to ask respectfully that you wait until the end to ask questions, seek clarification, or offer comments, because some of the pieces will all fit together as you go through the presentation. And of course, last but not least, in the words of Stephen Covey, seek first to understand, then be understood. I will try to live by this in our presentation. And of course, we hope that others will as well. So there's the basic ground rules. And so let's kind of get started. So back about March of 2023, we began taking a look at the nature of our organization and perhaps some of the good aspects and some of the mistakes that we've made when we built up Radio Relay International. I think everybody here that's seen our videos knows that RRI was designed as an inclusive organization. It was designed to enhance and promote the national traffic system as it stood. It was meant to be collegial and cooperative. And, you know, we kind of concentrated in the beginning on developing documents and new effective training programs, developing and managing new external relationships to promote the traffic system, etc. And of course, we were going along swimmingly with this for a couple of years when COVID hit. And around that time, not only did that act as a disruptor, but we lost several key leadership officials. A couple passed away. We had another who ran into some significant family problems, etc. And we began to have some workflow problems, which we have since corrected. And one area where I think we made a bit of a mistake is we never really clearly defined a mission, roles, and responsibilities for registered radio operators. And that's one of the things we hope to solve tonight in this program. Additionally, we stressed again and again and again that, you know, our goal was to be inclusive, collegial, and a benefit to the national traffic system, including the ARRL components. But unfortunately, there's some lingering schisms in the traffic community that have made change difficult. I'm not going to go into the whys and wherefores that this exists. Some of it's probably an echo of the old CW versus single sideband schism that's always been kind of in the background, at least since the early 2000s, etc. Some of its misunderstanding, maybe that it was seen that RRI was a challenge to the NTS, which wasn't its original intent. And then, of course, recently the NTS 2.0 process emerged. And unfortunately, the NTS 2.0 process has excluded RRI on a peer-to-peer basis. And the NTS 2.0 process has been developing models and work plans and so forth without our input, and some of which is contrary to policies, programs, and procedures we had already developed in earlier years. So this has kind of increased divergence within the traffic system. So these are some of the problems that we've some of our own making, some of which are environmental. But on the other hand, we've done a lot of very successful things, right? We've developed a wide array of up-to-date training materials and documents. We've definitely improved relationships and interoperability with local, national, and emergency communications organizations. We probably created the first curated, and probably the first up-to-date net directory for traffic nets and the like that's been issued in probably decades. We created the first national response plan that was based not just on the Cascadia Rising exercise in 2016, but on subsequent internal and external emergency communications exercises. We've developed new radiogram and radiogram ICS 213 forms based on surveys of best practices within the MCOM community. And we've also worked extensively with the WinLink development team to develop new interface methods between WinLink and RRI networks. And I could go on with these. I'm not here to so much blow our horn. But, we want this extensive work product and the effort that we've invested in this to be successful. And we have to face a reality, and that is cooperation and growth and change are becoming kind of impossible in the fractured environment. There's only so much that we could do. And while we had hoped to, and we had made multiple attempts to enter into kind of a collegial peer-to-peer relationship with the league, our attempts were rebuffed, and the result was not so much, let's say, non-responsive, but it was actually contrarian in many respects, albeit I think a contrarianism that's driven by a small minority, but which is nonetheless disruptive. So we find ourselves in a position where if we want RRI to continue to evolve, continue to adapt, and continue to improve traffic handling, public service communications, and play a role in a meaningful public service communications environment, we need to adapt and change. So what this proposal offers is a path forward that we feel is going to be beneficial to solving some very long-standing problems in let's call it the traffic community, because first and foremost, we were founded as a traffic handling organization. So recently, we've been discussing long-standing traffic problems with quite a few different people, both within high levels at the ARRL, within various served agencies. And what we found is that as we've raised the awareness of traffic handling and NTS, various organizations have been quietly testing the traffic system with some routine traffic. And generally speaking, the results have been abysmal. The large percentages of messages simply aren't delivered, even when they're originated with known good address and contact information. One organization reported that upwards of 100% of the routine messages they originated were not delivered. Now, I might write this off as potential disinformation or the like, but it rang a bell with me because a good number of years ago, before we formed RRI, we used to originate NTS radiograms during a steam train excursion in Michigan. We set up a message center at the Mount Pleasant, Michigan Railroad Depot. And when the large 1225 steam locomotive would bring a passenger train up, we would collect radiograms, i.e. telegrams, we called them, but they were radiograms, and we would send them by telegraph to a NTS gateway, and the gateway would go ahead and inject them into NTS. And we did this for 3 years, I think, if my memory serves. And the second year, we got a number of complaints that the radiograms never arrived. By the third year, it was painful. Dozens and dozens of people coming up to complain that messages weren't delivered. As a matter of fact, it got to be so bad that our volunteers decided they didn't want to do it anymore because they didn't like the negative environment that was created. And this is not a new problem. I mean, we have to suspend cognitive dissonance and recognize the fact that we have some kind of last mile problem within the existing traffic community. What the cause of this is, maybe not up to me to define, but certainly I think part of this has been poor management of bulk traffic. The dichotomy within the established traffic system has made it difficult for RRI to address the bulk traffic problem. We created a coordination process, a simple email reflector, a set of kind of loose guidelines, and we asked bulk traffic originators to communicate with each other, manage the process through kind of a collegial, communications method of saying, hey, I'm thinking of originating messages on such and such a subject. But what we found was that the larger bulk traffic operators were simply unwilling to participate in an RRI process. So we still encounter this problem of incorrect and obsolete address information. And in many respects, for those that are hardcore traffic handlers, this isn't a problem. But when new volunteers show up, new traffic handlers show up, ARIES people get involved, Oxcom people get involved, they see this as it's degrading to their morale. They see this as kind of a waste of their time because the message has, obsolete information. And so we have kind of failed at this process of managing the bad aspects of bulk traffic originations. And by the way, this is not to say that all bulk traffic is bad. It's simply saying that poorly managed bulk traffic originations are bad. So, let me put that qualifier in there. Another issue that we've identified, and I don't think it's a secret to anybody. I'm sorry, is there a problem? Oh, okay. Another problem that we have to admit to is that we occasionally run into this issue of long message propagation times. So, and there's probably a cause for this, which is simply a lack of volunteers. In the manual mode process, if the region net representative doesn't show up, then of course, traffic sits for another 24, maybe 48 hours. And as a result, traffic disappears. So then, of course, we have the last mile disconnect, and that's the aforementioned problem of traffic makes it to the section or state or local net, and sometimes it sits for days. There's no outlet, or it disappears at the last mile. And in many cases, if you're going to encourage new people to try a messaging system, you can't have traffic disappear. There has to be some commitment to deliver it. On the other hand, if the address information is consistently incorrect, well, then you can't deliver it. So this creates a catch-22 process, you might say, that's, again, harmful to new volunteer activity, is harmful to the reputation of the system, and it doesn't really effectively exercise the system to be of value, should it ever be needed in an MCOM situation. Which of course brings us to the fact that, RRI, I don't think it's any secret, is the only organization, the first organization to have taken a role in integrating the traffic system into various MCOM initiatives. And we've worked hard to build partnership with other organizations to support MCOM, to develop unique and innovative programs to solve their problems, etc. But the reality is, if we're going to create a program to support MCOM initiatives, we have to be able to solve these connectivity problems, these disconnects, etc. And here's the problem. And, and again, this isn't being said to be negative, but we can't solve these problems within the current fractured traffic system. And by that, I mean, politically fractured, socially fractured, or with an organization that is unwilling to operate in a collegial and cooperative manner. So we need to find a path forward, and we need to deal with these things that don't work. We tried to set up a system to manage bulk traffic, and of course, non-RRI or anti-RRI bulk originators simply ignored the process. We looked at ways to manage this, maybe a bulk precedence, et cetera. Again, no change. And this isn't just about bulk traffic. It's about the process in general, right? How do we make a traffic system that works? So obviously, we looked at prerequisites to how we might evolve RRI. And of course, the prime directive here is we do no harm and continue to support the national traffic system. Okay, so everything that you're going to see in this program is done with the intent of doing no harm to NTS, and we want to continue to support NTS. We recognize certain realities that RRI recognizes that most traffic handlers do not like politics. They don't want to have anything to do with infighting. The vast majority, there's a few guys that thrive in it, I'm sure, but most people, they just want to do something meaningful and purposeful with their communications equipment. The majority of NTS volunteers and ARRL sections are doing good work in the field. They are mission oriented, they're results oriented, and as they say in Las Vegas, so to speak, what happens in Newington stays in Newington, really. So we don't want to do anything that's going to necessarily disrupt ARRL section operations in a significant way. These ARRL sections are generally positive and mission oriented, even if the ARRL board or the Emergency Communications and Field Services Committee is a disruptor. And again, we don't want to necessarily disrupt existing NTS nets or operations, and of course, we will continue to provide infrastructure for NTS. However, if RRI is to make headway solving long-standing problems, we need to implement a form of limited isolation from NTS and Newington politics. And this is how we imagine it happening, okay? So, but remember, as I go through this and we assemble the pieces of this plan, our goal is to do no harm to NTS. Well, at the same time, we're going to have an impact on NTS, but at the same time, we want to create a system in which we can implement effective change and attract new volunteers. We need a system in which higher priority radiograms, that is, radiograms originated in time of emergency, are routed to their destination reliably, accurately, and delivered promptly. Okay. We need the last mile reliability problem for routine traffic resolved. If a new ham gets on WinLink and he originates his first radiogram, that radiogram needs to be delivered. And so we have a goal that 98% or better of all radiograms are either delivered or promptly serviced back. That would be a goal, okay? And finally, we have a fiduciary responsibility that if we develop we agree to support an MCOM customer, we have to provide a quality of service that can reliably, accurately, and promptly serve that MCOM customer. So this is the kind of system that we envision. And Essentially, what we're seeking to do is solve a classic customer service problem. If you've ever owned a restaurant, or you've ever worked in retail, or you've worked for a manufacturing company, customer service is an important issue. And there's essentially four realities here. Number one is that those who originate radiograms expect them to be delivered in a timely manner, okay? Particularly non-traditional traffic handlers. If you want to grow the program, people who originate their first radiograms would expect them to be delivered relatively promptly. Number two, they expect the radiogram to arrive accurate and complete and to be delivered professionally. If it's a served agency or an MCOM organization like Aries or Races or Oxcom, they have a reasonable expectation that any messages transmitted via an RRI infrastructure or its partner infrastructures will propagate through the network to the addressee in a timely fashion. Okay. The analogy, by the way, that I'm fond of using is the analogy of a volunteer fire department. In many areas, the volunteer fire company is not paid, but nonetheless, if you pick up the phone and you dial 911 because your house is on fire, you have a reasonable expectation that the volunteers who show up have been trained. They know how to ventilate the structure. They know how to perform a rescue. They know how to operate the apparatus. They know how to attack the fire, etc., etc. Well, the same is true when radio amateurs are called upon to provide a service, whether that service is MCOM related and it's sending maybe some welfare messages for your next door neighbor, or it's something on behalf of an agency. It doesn't matter. There's an expectation that if you're offering the service, you will provide the customer service that's anticipated. And then lastly, there is a tendency on the part of those who use the traffic system to measure its value based on the quality of customer service. Okay, and that has a major impact on whether or not they choose to get involved and support the program. That will determine for them whether or not they feel. That's a measurement. I guess let me put it this way. It creates a measure of whether or not the organization has sufficient value to warrant the investment of volunteer time. If I originate a radiogram and it isn't delivered or it shows up 2 weeks later, well, I'm going to say, well, why should I get involved, right? Why would I invest my valuable life energy and time if this is the quality of service that's offered? So again, classic customer service problem. If you go to a really good restaurant and you have a terrible first experience, you don't go back. It might just be an off night. They might be the greatest restaurant in the state, but if you go and you have that bad experience, then of course you're not going to go back. It's just the reality of customer service. So here's our solution. What RRI is looking at doing is essentially creating a limited virtual private network. You might call this a VPN, a traffic and MCOM VPN. We would remain interoperable with national traffic system for routine traffic. And in some respects, but not all, as you'll see in a later slide, we would retain the status quo. However, there's a kind of a wrinkle or two in this. RRI registered radio operators would treat all routine traffic in much the same manner as they treat bulk traffic. They will keep it on the usual NTS routings. They'll keep it on the usual NTS nets. It'll be listed in much the same manner. So if a message is routine, it's basically going to propagate through the traffic system in the same manner as any NTS message. There's no reason that RRI operators shouldn't continue to participate in NTS nets. as much as they desire. So there's no limitation say that all you have to support RRI and none of this NTS stuff. We want NTS to succeed, but we just don't want NTS to hold us back from evolution. So what we will do is we're going to create this VPN, and ideally we're going to start building it. It's going to take some time, but we're going to start building it around our cadre of registered radio operators. And this VPN is going to be used for conveying higher priority message traffic. So what we're going to do is the VPN built around this cadre of registered radio operators will handle the emergency, priority, and welfare messages. And additionally, we are going to create a new precedence that would also be carried via the VPN. And this is called the fast telegram. This is a classification imported from commercial telecommunications services. So essentially, we would differentiate or break the routine classification into two categories. There would be the routine message, which would be carried as usual on NTS circuits. And then there would be the fast telegram, okay? And this new precedence, as with emergency, priority, and welfare messages, would apply only to the RRI VPN. And it would indicate that the message is sufficiently unique, and I stress unique, and sufficiently time sensitive that it should be routed only via the VPN. So again, this is called the fast telegram precedence. Now, the idea here is to differentiate unique personal radiograms from bulk message traffic, recognizing the reality that if we were to attempt to create a bulk precedence, the schism, the divergence within the traffic system that's occurring would prevent that from being successful. So what we're going to do is we're going to have now, right, if assuming the plan is approved, we will have, of course, the traditional emergency, priority, welfare classifications. Then we will have the fast telegram followed by the routine message. So in order of precedence, emergency, priority, welfare, fast telegram, and routine, okay? And this is how fast telegram is defined. And you can probably read this for yourself, but we'll quickly go through it. It's any message other than emergency, priority, or welfare which meets these criteria. Number one, the operator shall have a reasonable expectation that the address, phone number, and other contact information contained in the address is timely and correct. So to extrapolate on this point, in other words, the address information, the contact information is not harvested from, say, whitepages.com or yellowpages.com or whatever. There's a known good source that's timely and current. That's the foundation for the address. Number two, the message content must be unique in character. In other words, this isn't a bulk message. The message must be transmitted as the result of a prior relationship or transaction between the signatory, the originator, that's the person whose signature appears on the radiogram, and the addressee. Examples include, but are not necessarily limited to, birthday greeting between family members and friends, acknowledgement of a membership award, or other action by a club or an organization in which the messages originated in response to an action by the addressee, and in which case the address information is known to be complete, or personal communications between family, friends, etc., regarding events, planned activities, or other notifications. Now, these are examples, but the idea here is that there has to be an action by the addressee that serves as a catalyst for the origination of the message. So, for example, if I join the Wooden Canoe Heritage Society, and the Wooden Canoe Heritage Society has my current, because I just filled out a membership form, my current address, phone number, email, etc., then I know that I can send that message. On the other hand, there's bulk traffic, and bulk traffic is generally defined as the originator having no prior or direct relationship with the addressee. The message is originated in response to the inaction of the addressee, not renewing your ham license, etc. The message is designed to promote a particular organization or activity in which the addressee has no prior involvement, expressed no prior interest, or in which the originator has no prior information of the potential interest of the addressee. So in other words, a guy gets a ham license and somebody looks up his contact information on white pages, originates a message suggesting he join Aries. Well, obviously, he doesn't have up-to-date address information. He doesn't have up-to-date. He has no idea whether or not the person's even interested in the message. And of course, the last aspect that defines or differentiates bulk traffic from the fast telegram is the fact that messages typically consist of a text routinely sent to multiple parties. So within this structure, all bulk traffic would be classified as routine and would be transmitted outside of the RRI VPN. In other words, they would stay on NTS routings. Okay, fast telegrams, emergency priority welfare messages would be routed within the RRI VPN. So this is the general clarification. So interoperable traffic with NTS would be anything classified as routine. Traffic that would ideally, as we build out this program, traffic that would be exclusive to the RRI VPN would be emergency priority welfare and fast telegram messages. The assumption here, of course, is that there would be a limited number of these messages. Our volunteers would have the correct information, skills, and training needed to deliver them professionally and reliably and accurately. And they wouldn't burn out, say, as they might on NX9K messages or things of that nature. Again, there's nothing to prevent an RRO, registered radio operator, from also participating in NTS. If you want to handle 500 bulk messages a month, man, go for it. We have no problem with that. But this allows us to break out the RRI process to provide a class of service that is superior and on which we can begin to build a culture of professionalism and a high grade of customer service. So to juxtapose current versus the proposed structure, the NTS method, pretty much all the traffic is routine. Probably the vast majority of that is bulk. We have the ongoing, seemingly intractable problem of incorrect address information. It's corrosive and harmful to system culture. We have a diffusion of responsibility within the system that allows traffic to disappear without tracing or accountability. And we have problems that are basically impossible for us to correct as a separate entity, well, somewhat separate entity, under the current divided arrangement. And in many cases, we have entire sections that will not work with us. Of course, we have others that will, but the problem is that you have 50 states, and if you're going to have a unified national or international messaging structure, you need to have a way to ensure that you have quality control from point of origination to point of delivery. The RRI method creates a new classification for genuine personal radiograms. It creates a cadre of skilled, qualified, and vetted radio operators who we know have the skills, training, capacity, and desire to ensure that they're routed and delivered promptly at their point of destination, and in which the priority is promptness of delivery and customer service. And we have now control over the last mile. So ideally, as this program grows and evolves, our registered radio operators would be encouraged to begin developing, you might call a cadre of reliable outlets within their state. These don't necessarily have to be registered radio operators. They could be trusted NTS or even unaffiliated operators, but they would be encouraged to register. They'd be encouraged to get the proper training, and they would be required to follow our regulations, you might say. For example, if I originate a radiogram ICS 213 message via RRI, okay, that message should follow our procedures and policies for how it's delivered. It's got to be delivered on the correct form. The correct accountability information needs to be on it, the correct record keeping. These are things that allow us to control the quality of service. We're not interested in telling sections how to run things, but we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure quality of service. So the idea here is, again, volunteers can be both NTS and RRI. We really don't care. We don't want our registered radio operators to be burned out by bulk traffic originations. We want meaningful, fast telegrams or higher priority public service traffic to be delivered promptly and professionally by trained and vetted radio operators. We need our procedures respected. We need our forms utilized when required, and we need our standards respected. And again, when you have different standards being promulgated by another committee in a fractured system, we can't accomplish this unless we create the VPN. We need accountability. We want traffic to be routed to specific state target stations. So for example, we would have perhaps, half dozen, or more. You can have as many as you want, really, state target stations that are part of this VPN. So it's not just one guy, it's not just three guys, but you can have a multiple group of people, so you have redundancy, and you can maybe even operate 24 hours a day in time of emergency. The idea is, though, that we would have specific target stations in each state that are our VPN target stations, to which all fast telegrams, welfare, priority, or emergency messages would be routed. And then the target stations are the other RRI registered radio operators in that section will be the ones that would promote the program, grow the program, bring people in that would be properly trained. We'll train them and provide the training materials, whatever's necessary, so that we know that they're going to do a professional, high quality job. And what we hope to ultimately accomplish is, to some extent, quite frankly, isolate RRI from NTS in a very simple but important way, so that we can begin to create a new effective traffic system that is relevant, useful, and in which participants can take pride. And in the process, minimizing any kind of disruption to NTS. So along with this, we will, as many of you know, we have traditionally had the RRI registered radio operator. This is the individual who is basically simply registered. He's put on our mailing list. He agrees to kind of follow our, support us in kind of a broad way. But to support this VPN process, we are proposing the creation of a certified radio operator. And we haven't defined exactly what the credentials are for a certified radio operator, but he would be, if you want to be a certified radio operator, you would have to attend certain online training courses or have a proven resume and traffic work that can be verified. You have either demonstrated experience handling actual traffic, or you actually have some exercises where you originate and receive messages with an instructor or the like to prove that you have the skills. You agree to abide by our rules and follow our procedures, and the certified radio operator would give priority to messages originated via the RRI virtual private network or our affiliated MCOM organizations. The idea here is, as you'll see in a subsequent slide, that we want this to not just be a digital traffic net function, but ultimately a manual mode as well. But we would start this process with digital traffic network, because within the DTN, we have the capacity to create target stations and unique addresses for this VPN process. So we begin to build the program via the digital traffic network. And ideally, we create this certified radio operator position that shows people are fully trained, they know what they're doing, they know how to handle communications traffic on certain modes reliably, be it voice or digital or whatever the case might be. Again, this is not a restrictive program. Registered radio operators would be at liberty to continue to participate in any NTS activity. The messages, when they arrive at the state level, can certainly be handled on a section level NTS net. But within the context of that section level NTS net, if it's a fast telegram or higher priority message, it would have to, or ideally, it would be handled exclusively by registered radio operators. Again, we will continue to promote NTS participation. We in no way discourage it. It has value. The training aspect alone has value. But we need to consider, again, RRI has this fiduciary responsibility as a nonprofit NGO to provide a high quality of service to our users. And we have to respect our volunteers by using their time and investment judiciously and respectfully. And our policies would ideally support this. So ultimately, what we're proposing, again, is these two networks in the same pipeline, RRI and NTS, with overlap and some limited level of interoperability. Again, the digital traffic net will be where we would start this process. It would be the initial backbone for the new initiative. Within the RRI VPN, certified radio operators would act as the digital target stations for their state. Ideally, we would have redundancy in each state, ideally three deep. This would allow a number of things. Number one, obviously nobody's home 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But also remember that under the National Response Plan, we may have to set download or connect frequencies for DTS operators, maybe every half hour or every 15 minutes or whatever the case might be, every hour. And you need multiple people to be able to provide the level of throughput in time of emergency under the response plan. So we would ideally have redundancy within these target stations. Each state would have a unique address that's shared by these target stations, and it would be separate from the usual NTS routings, right? So it would be, a unique target address for each state, and then these various target stations, these certified radio operators would use that address to access traffic for their state. A unique identifier would ultimately be developed for fast telegrams and so forth that are to be routed by the RRI VPN, so that once the message moves into, or if it moves through a manual mode net, it can still be identified as an RRI exclusive function when possible. The WinLink gateways are already an exclusive RRI function, really. We manage the program. Ideally, we would want over time all of the RRI gateway operators to become registered radio operators or ideally certified radio operators. It's important, by the way, to understand that WinLink is one of the areas, the WinLink forms that are used to route traffic into the RRI system is one of the primary entry points for new traffic handlers. And it's also used by MCOM organizations for training. We see quite a few of those. So again, relatively small volumes of traffic moving from WinLink into RRI, but it's often those messages that will provide the meaningful first impressions of the system. So we want to have good quality control. So this is kind of a simplified diagram of how it might look to start. We have unique address and routing for the RRI target stations and WinLink gateways. The NTS DTS process remains unchanged. And so this gives us the ability to begin the process, you might say, of building a new enhanced traffic system based on professional grade standards. And again, we don't want you to think that we're ignoring the manual modes. It's just that as we begin to build this program out, the state target stations would obviously be primarily a DTN type function. And then, of course, ideally, over time, we might, maybe it will just naturally evolve into working with the various NTS section nets, and, it'll be kind of a, parallel process within those section nets. Or we may, if participation warrants, we might add some supplemental single sideband and CW wide coverage networks for manual mode message origination, or particularly as a supplemental MCOM resource. So, for example, Hurricane Maria some years back with Puerto Rico, much of the welfare traffic leaving Puerto Rico was handled single sideband, right? It was the mode that was available. Well, it would be nice to have the capacity to perform that kind of support function backed by a reliable, professional quality infrastructure. Furthermore, our national response plan does define the concept of priority entry points. That is, message traffic going to specific agencies can be listed on certain watch frequencies and expedited to its point of destination, much as we did in the successful Cascadia Rising exercise. Ultimately, other ideas are going to arise, maybe other modes will be implemented, but the idea here is that we begin the process of creating what you might call a modern traffic system, a more up-to-date traffic system, unencumbered by some of the schisms that have lingered, as well as some of the, let's call it the old habits that have lingered over the decades and are holding back evolution. So that's kind of the idea. And I guess I'll kind of start closing on this by remember that there may be very few circumstances where a long-haul traffic system is needed for MCOM, but we are let's call it the communications resource of last resort. So we need to, say, plan for the worst-case scenario, the major tsunami in the Pacific Northwest, or a major attack on infrastructure, or whatever. Are these things likely to happen? Perhaps not. But the point is that we do have a responsibility to always be available to provide a reasonable MCOM service. No matter what you put in on one side of our network, within reason, the limitations of its abilities, the identical product needs to come out the other end. And that's really what we're after, is that, we provide a service that's good to the day-to-day customer. We provide a service that's more than adequate, hopefully exceeds expectations for, let's call it a professional customer, EMA, or whomever might call on us, the local ARIES group, or whomever, to handle communications traffic. What happens when, for example, when somebody in Puerto Rico originates a message in Spanish? You know, how would we handle that, right? Pretty difficult to do on single sideband. Relatively easy to do with CW or digital modes. These are all the things that we need to start looking at. And we do not want to dispose of 8 years of hard work and what we think is a very good work product because we can't get past this kind of schism within the traffic community. So this is our way of looking at these problems. So in summary, we would now have 5 classes of Telegram. We would have unique routing codes for each state, which would direct these higher priority messages to a target station. Target station would be a certified radio operator, ideally. We would begin to build a process of using our existing cadre of registered radio operators, of promoting registration with the RRI, promoting the RRI training. We begin to create this culture of professionalism and a high quality of service at the grassroots, last mile level of the network. And as it grows, who knows, we can maybe expand into additional manual mode nets, things of this nature, but that's the idea. So this would be your typical timeline and mileposts. Obviously, number one, we're doing right now, we're holding the registered radio operator meetings. We would open the certified radio operator applications in April. We would start the certified radio operator training sessions in May. We would implement the VPN routing process probably in June, and ideally commence the new program sometime in July. Now, I do probably need to add that this might start out small. It might start out with a limited number of people, but the idea is that once we put the process in place, then we can hopefully grow it and make it a success. So that's kind of an overview of the plan that we've developed. And I think the way to handle this with the after the presentation phase is Jim Kutch, if you would be so kind as to review the chat comments and select those that require discussion or questions to be answered. And we can also handle them here on the thing. So let's see, Dan, WL7COO, you have your hand raised. So let me do this. I guess I can leave that slide up. Let's see, hang on a second. Let me escape this, stop the share. There we go. Okay. So Dan, WL7COO, you had your hand raised.
Yeah. Jim, I like you, Jim, and I like what you're doing. There's an unfortunate use of words that are not being used the same way by people you're trying to inform. EMCOM, for instance, emergency managers don't manage emergencies. They manage resources that are applied to solving the damage done by emergencies. Just by references to using the common phrase EMCOM. And VPN has a hard and fast definition used by virtually everybody in the computer world. And it means there are 2 elements involved, one of which is impossible in the environment you're operating in because you can't encrypt stuff. And the other one is masking IP addresses. That's sort of irrelevant for our conversation because we're talking about amateur radio. I'm an SEC and I'm no friend of the league in the way they are misusing the word emergency and EMCOM. As a matter of fact, I wake up every day wondering if I'm going to find out I've been fired as an SEC. And you have 100% of my sympathy about what's happened to NTS. And I'm going to stop there.
Okay, well, let's do this. I mean, this will make it easier. Let's take MCOM entirely out of the picture.
There you go.
Let's just talk about this. First of all, I was a certified Michigan State Police certified professional emergency manager for 25 years, so I know how emergency management
You're
works.
trying to improve the
Well,
use of the official radio services traffic handling.
right. And second of all, I know that by calling this a virtual private network, it's not in the computer sense. It's essentially a parallel network in the same pipeline, but you needed to have some kind of term that could be used. And in a sense, it is a limited virtual private network, but not truly private. But then most amateur radio resources aren't private. But anyway, I get your point. But in terms of, so for the subsequent discussion, let's just imagine that MCOM doesn't exist. We're just talking about improving the traffic system. And so that's kind of where we're going here. We have a bunch of comments, and I'm going to have Jim go through some of those. But we do have a couple of hands raised first. So Lee, I'm going to turn it to you, WA0UIG.
Thank you. Yeah, good evening. I'm the Iowa Section Manager, Section Emergency Coordinator, and I'm not going to mince any words. This is absolutely brilliant. Okay, and here's why. Because I knew this meeting was coming up, I've spent the last 2 weeks studying last mile issues that are very current in today's climate that can apply directly to what we do in handling traffic. And I've talked to my section traffic manager and the section traffic manager in the next state over, and we've discussed a lot of things. And one of the things that you have to understand at the section level, the way we do things is all traffic is tactical. We do not teach the precedence, of delivering and returning a date and time and things like that. It's either delivered because we have the circuit, or it's not delivered because we don't have the circuit. And then we work on that. If we need the circuit, we build the circuit. The way that you've designed this, the one issue that we had was, if there's emergency traffic, we would need an activation at the section level. And I could not figure out in my weeks of studying this issue, could not figure out how to do that. And you solved that problem by putting in trained operators in the section that we can count on to be ready and available, because we're not volunteer firefighters, even though we are very similar. We don't have pagers. We're not on 24/7. And so this really resolves that activation procedure issue where the section can't mesh with the traffic handlers because we don't have activation. That solves that problem. It solves the traffic precedence problem. The only thing that I can see that is a concern that we discussed in our section is the abuse of emergency in the precedence, so that people can get their traffic prioritized through the system. But I'm sure that could be handled if you have trained people to vet that at a professional level. I have no doubt that that could be addressed. So I think that's it. I've been thinking about this, knowing this meeting was coming up, had no idea what you were going to be doing. Knew that one of the issues was going to be last mile delivery. We already have a way of operating in the section that we can't really address just based on outside influences. It has to be something that we adopt. Mm-hmm. And this meshes very well with how we work, especially in emergency communications. So thank you.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate that. Thank you for the positive input. And hopefully, like I said, we want this to be positive. We want this to be something that the ARRL sections, we don't care if you're ARRL or Mars or whatever, it doesn't matter. But the idea is that we can provide that quality of service that's needed. It's mission oriented, kind of thing. So thank you. Did somebody else have their hand up? Let's see. Jim, is there anything in
Yeah.
the comment?
I guess just to quickly summarize what's been going on the chat side, there's a lot of discussion of bulk traffic. It's a great training mechanism. It's the way to get new traffic handlers on board. There was discussion of what if we just banned it. I'll react to that by saying the purpose here for RRI is never to ban anything. And in a broad sense, the traffic system is the post office. And unless the thing being sent through the post office is illegal or dangerous, the post office can't really pass judgment on the value of that message. And so as traffic handlers, we don't have the right to pass value on that as well. So banning bulk traffic is not the idea here. The idea more is that it's going to have a higher probability, let's say, it's not going to be guaranteed, that traffic with this fast telegram precedence is going to be handled by a certified operator, not just a volunteer operator. And that certified operator is agreeing to do the things that have been discussed here in mail. They will respond to the HXCs. They will make sure to throw a stamp on it and mail it if that is necessary. So, and certified operators should only pass a message to another certified operator. Now they can do that through any of the existing channels, but not to a trainee who isn't a certified operator. So again, VPN's a bad choice of words. I agree with that comment. But the VPN tunnel aspect is very realistic to what we're talking about. This is a tunnel through the traffic system from one certified operator to another certified operator, where both ends of that tunnel have reasonable expectations that all of the procedures will be followed and the traffic will be delivered. So that, Jim, that's a kind of a summary of a lot of the things that have been discussed and my personal reaction to them.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I gave a lot of thought to, well, what do you call it, and without getting, excessively wordy or whatever. And so I came up with a limited virtual private network, but you're right, it's really a tunnel.
James,
Yeah, Charles.
could I just jump in real quick since I work for the post office? I can give you a quick analogy for everybody.
Sounds good. Yeah, then we'll go to Tom. So Tom,
Yeah.
hang on. Charles, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that, Tom. Okay, a quick analogy for this is regular first or third class mail. Okay, so first class is the personal mail, third class is the bulk mail. But if you need something to get through, that's why we have things like express mail or priority mail, where it is actually tracked every single step of the way. And even to the point of delivery by your local carrier, they carry a scanner that scans the barcode and the tracking number. So we know exactly when it's been delivered.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, this is in many respects, it's not a revolutionary idea. So, to take Charles's analogy, if you go back to Postal Telegraph, Western Union, Canadian National Telegraph, whatever, you had different classes of service, right? You had the fast telegram, you had day letters, you had night letters, and they had, each one had a lower guarantee of service, you might say, associated with them. And this is kind of just like the post office. This is what we're doing with an overlay of what you might call a methodology for quality control. Tom, you had raised your hand, K0SN. Go ahead, sir.
Jim, are you planning on putting these slides in the recording of the meeting up on the website so that people that haven't attended the meeting can access them?
Yes, we will definitely do that.
Okay. Is that going to be pretty soon?
Yeah, I'll try and get it done here within the next 48 hours.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
There's several people that I would have expected to see here and they didn't show up. So I'm going to put a little bug under them and make sure they check it out.
Okay. Yeah. Well, once we get it up, we'll send an announcement out to everybody.
Cool.
Okay. Other hands raised, other comments, Mike, MAL. We'll go with you first since I can see your name and it says two others raised their hands. So Mike, I think you're next in line.
Very good, JW. I look at this a little bit on the other side of the coin. I'm not necessarily last mile, but I do a fair share of relays. And I also do a fair share of message input into the system. I'm a little miffed, I guess would be the best way to put it. Where do I fall when, yes, I get the phone numbers from the public domain, but I get their address from the commission website? I mean, that kind of puts me in between routine and fast telegram. That's my quandary.
Yeah, I understand that. I think the key answer to your quandary is telephone and email. I mean, in other words, yes, the commission. Well, I'll give you a personal example. I use my office address as my FCC license address, okay? Because that's where I get important mail. If the FCC ever sends me a pink slip, somebody's going to see Federal Communications Commission and open it, right? So, but that's not where I live, okay? And so this brings us back to the kind of circle back to, gosh, I heard that so much from, I think it was President Biden's press secretary, and we're going to circle back to that. But anyway, we'll circle back to that by saying that the idea here is that, number one, it's unique. Number two, we have known, accurate, and complete address information so that there's multiple options for delivery. And that would be the idea behind the fast telegram. This is not to say bulk traffic's all bad. Let's be honest. When you look at your typical NTS circuit, your section net, probably, what would you say, like 95% of the traffic is bulk traffic, right? And without traffic to handle, there might not be anything for a lot of these guys to do. So it's not all bad. It's just that it's not managed well. And there are guys who do originate bulk traffic that's useful, but it's still not the same as a unique personal radiogram.
Definitely agree.
Yeah. Let's see. K0, Tom, W4KX. I think you're next in line.
Oh, I just jumped in front of someone. Sorry.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. I can just only see what pops up on my screen.
So it sounds great. I applaud the idea of putting something between a routine and priority. But I really don't think we are going to be able to get certified operators at the last mile level. I think if you're trying to do that, we're having enough trouble doing that now at the regular level. So if you want to give it to me, okay, you probably figure it's going to get there because I also have a liaison to the state EOC. But if you're going to try to get it to Sparta, North Carolina, you're not going to have anyone there. And so where things stall is because either we don't have addresses or emails, and we've already discussed that, but also, ultimately someone has to deliver it. And I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen.
Well, I think, there's two factors here, one of which is traffic volume. And the other thing, of course, is, connectivity, right? So when it comes to your typical bulk messages, you might get 10 or 12 of those into a section a week, maybe 20. How many truly unique radiograms do you get, right? You might get, I think in my experience in traffic handling, I've probably handled, a handful of priority messages that were, legit, priority messages, unless it's a major disaster of some kind. So, and furthermore, if the priority is changed from routing to an outlet, if it's small quantities, and if the priority is changed from routing to the outlet to getting it delivered, I'll deliver a message 100 miles away in my state if it's necessary, if timeliness is the important value, right? I mean, and I've done that, with routine radiograms. And I think that's the idea here. This is one of the reasons we created the fast telegram precedents. We don't want to burn a guy like you out. We may start with one guy like you in some states, right? And, you might get 5 or 10 fast telegrams in a month. but you may get 50 bulk messages. We want to concentrate on that fast telegram or higher messages because they have value. They have higher value. And that's the idea. And I do agree with you. Member recruitment's going to be our big problem. Finding outlets are going to be our big problem. But I suppose in a way you could argue we're taking a gamble here, but we're kind of doing a build it and they will come approach. I'm a believer that if you create a good quality program with professional standards, you will attract good quality volunteers and people. You're not going to attract large numbers of them, but for example, there's a reason young men still enlist in the Marine Corps. It's not just the snazzy uniform, which they probably have the best looking uniform out of the branches of the armed forces, but it's because it has a certain reputation, right? Is that, this is, a premier service. And that's not to disparage any other service, but you know what I mean. I think if we can create a program that provides a high quality of service, emphasizes professionalism, we will begin to attract people. Now, I could be proven wrong, but what's the alternative to trying?
Well, you're probably going to get okay, so I'm in Cary, which is just outside of Raleigh, and I'm a primary conduit to get to the state EOC. So a lot of the F messages might go through me, and that's not a big issue. But to say that going out to one of our 100 counties out in the hinterlands, no, you're not going to get that.
Yeah. Well, we have to start somewhere, and that's the idea here. You're right. I mean, we're not getting anywhere with the current model. Let's be honest.
Well, I kind of like the idea of having a priority between, the usual bulk traffic. And I think a lot of us, so I'm handling a lot of traffic every day. And a lot of us are kind of, hate to say it, but we do prioritize it. I look at it and say, well, this is an NX9K. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm going to handle these ones, which are kind of unique. And so that's fine, but I think one needs to be careful about one's expectations.
Fair, duly noted. I think that's a fair observation. Yeah. Let's see, who's next? Tom W4KX.
That was me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So let me see if I can click on this. Maybe it'll tell me.
I'm not sure how I can get rid of this.
W2ZXN is next, and then W3CJD.
Okay, W2ZXN. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, good evening. So I want to say first off that I like this idea. I think it's great. I think it works out. I also think that I'm very happy to see that you're leaving the ARRL stuff alone. One thing that I personally have been sick and tired of hearing is the RRI versus ARRL or ARRL versus RRI. I think you're both tunnels, highways to the same end, but you're next to each other. You serve two different purposes, and I've always felt that way. And so I think this is great, especially focused on MCOM and emergency priority welfare, fast, important traffic. I think that's great stuff. What I would like to know, and I feel like you touched on it for just a second and kind of moved on. It looks like your timeline's a little tight. So I'm wondering if you already have a training plan in mind, and if you would be willing to share a little bit more about what you're planning for training.
Right, so I think I can answer that, Andy. We do have a fair amount of training in place. If you go to our webpage, you can look at, there's a syllabus on there. There's, I think, 10 or 11 RRI training classes that have already been developed. Now, of course, if we adopt this plan, then of course, we're going to have to modify some of the training materials. But generally speaking, most of the training is already in place. We have policies and procedures, for example, we have training on how to manage ICS 213 messages. We have an introduction to the RRI traffic system. We have about 10 programs that have already been developed. So there would be some time involved in modifying this to reflect this restructuring process. And you're right, Andy, the timeline might be a little bit tight. And it's open to adjustment, right? I mean, if we need to move some things around, this is right now it's an idea. It's at the proposal stage, right? It's a rough outline, but we do have a fair amount of training that's already in place. Introduction to disaster telecommunications theory, so on and so forth. We have a lot of that present already.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Chris, who was the next guy? Oh, I mean, Charles. Who was the next guy?
Yeah, you're right. Chris is the next one.
Okay, Chris Dix, W3CJD. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Charles. One comment and then a question from my end. Just thinking along the lines of, or maybe before I get into that, I definitely think we're going the right way here. And definitely, I think this does a good job of addressing our problem of letting everything that's going on still go on. So keeping the system open while at the same time providing something that we can trust in its reliability. So definitely, I think we have a great foundation here. I imagine, of course, our success is going to ultimately come down to implementation and, of course, the details that we're not ready to get into yet. But definitely, I think with where we're at now, this is going the right way. But I was going to comment on like my take on some of the last mile stuff given this new proposal. The way I'm kind of thinking of it is I imagine we have to consider the system and its two different states that it could be in routine state versus what I'll call emergency state, or when it is activated. Routine state, if we truly filter out the volume of what I would consider bulk traffic right now, I imagine, at least from the get-go, of course, we'd want to get as many as we can, purely routine-wise, and considering what we realistically might see in routine for fast telegram or some of the other precedences, I imagine we'd largely be fine with just a couple per, maybe just analogous to ARRL section, or a couple in each area. When we get into activation and emergency and needing additional resources or volume, I think that's where we're probably going to have to look at it at more of the local level of who are we serving, as to, is it the RRI operator's job to truly distribute every individual message from this agency to a designated person, or maybe as an example, if there's an agreement between some of these local operators and a local ARIES group, perhaps they have an agreement just that the scope of the RRI operators, knowing their resources, are just any ARIES traffic coming into that region is going to funnel in and be routed into some ARIES net, or get some trusted RRI operators going into a couple of trusted ARIES operators. In this example, someone that they define, let them get it to the end people from there. So definitely last mile is going to remain the biggest challenge with no quick answer, but I guess it's a matter of balancing here based on volume and then who are we serving.
Yeah, Chris, I agree. The last mile will be the challenge, and that's why in the program we did kind of leave a little bit of flexibility open for the registered radio operator, the certified radio operator, to build a cadre of trusted individuals, right? Let's face it, if you're a regular participant in a communications network, particularly manual modes in particular, you pretty much know who's a high level operator and who's not. You kind of learn that the environment and the personnel, and so you know who's good, you know who you can rely on, who you're not. who's apolitical. He doesn't care, whether it's a ARRL or RRI. He just wants, he's mission oriented. He wants to get the job done. And, the idea is that over time, the registered radio operators, our certified radio operators will begin to get to know people. They'll encourage them to become involved in this process, maybe get some training. And over time, ideally, organically, the process will, kind of grow, and, the roots will go out into the sections and states, and we'll have a viable methodology. The idea, however, being that because you have a certified target stations, they will be able to, it'll be their responsibility, kind of, they pass the radiogram on to somebody, they kind of have an implicit duty to make sure he's reliable. And that's kind of the idea.
Yep, for sure. And as the question then I'll pose, and maybe this is more level of detail than you all on the RRI side have thought about up to this point, but definitely come like emergency scenarios will have to be agile with the larger network. But more specifically, how did you all envision kind of this specific, what we're calling the VPN here, to operate in a routine state? Let's say maybe we have 3 certified operators per ARRL section, just as a general idea for discussion here. How would we make sure they're all connected with each other? I kind of think of the same layers we have in NTS today, of locally and then between the sections, between the areas. I saw on one of the slides you had the proposal of maybe establishing a manual net to keep folks connected if need be. Is our idea, at least from the get-go, to really invest in and go all in on DTN as the place where this will operate, or should we also consider setting up some regular HF circuits or something where these operators outside of like the NTS area nets, which with their more specific, I'll call it, protocol, they may not be able to transfer what we're going to call fast telegram precedence, for example. So how do we keep that piece of the puzzle running?
Yeah, so there, you brought up a couple of issues here. Number one is we've already got some experience in that process with the WinLink RRI gateways. Steve, KB1TCE, might be better at addressing that, how that process works. But essentially, we have these region gateways, right? Gateway operators that basically are the link between radiogram and radiogram ICS 213 messages originated via WinLink. And we basically set them up as a group. Typically, it's something as simple as an email reflector type group, or just we make sure they're talking to each other, and it's their job amongst themselves to communicate and say, hey, look, I'm going to take Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Can you take Tuesday and Thursday, et cetera, and so on. So we would probably implement something similar. Like you said, we haven't fully fleshed that out, but the second thing I think we would probably need to, we've already kind of addressed in the National Response Plan. So if you go into the, I should have probably just called it the National Response Plan, but it's actually the RRI Emergency Communications Guidelines. It's available on our webpage, but it does address the issue of WinLink gateways and the DTN process. And that is, the emergency management director can specify what's called a connect/download frequency. So for example, if we have a really major, let's say it's the big one, right? We can say, okay, ideally we have some redundancy at each region level or each section level. And we may specify that the connect and download frequency is every 15 minutes or every hour or whatever. The idea is that it would be the responsibility of the DTS operators or the WinLink gateway operators to basically schedule themselves so that every hour, for example, or every half hour, whatever specified in the operating directive. They would connect, download the traffic, and then route it to an appropriate network for disposition. So we've kind of got a process that's been defined. But I think, again, if we implement this plan, these are some of the mechanics that we may need to kind of structure better and codify a little bit better to make sure it works. And then, the other thing we need to keep in mind is the age, the age of our volunteers, the fact that, some of us aren't going to be up all night handling traffic at 90 years old, but, but the point is here, ideally, if we do this right, we can start bringing in new people. And I think there's a lot of people that come into ham radio, but they really have no idea how to begin to purposefully use their communications equipment. Those are the people we need to, first of all, have a good, solid model of a program that we can begin to build. And then that, hopefully, we can use that to attract new people and fresh blood to flesh out these responsibilities.
Yep, for sure. And that's exactly how I myself got involved in traffic and then eventually Aries and other stuff, is that same kind of motivation you said there. So I know other folks are waiting, but I'll just throw out there in closing from my end.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Would we consider it a requirement that the certified radio operators are able to run digital? Or if not, how do we keep non-digital CROs in the loop, I'll call it, or able to remain involved?
Well, certainly we're going to start it on DTN because that's the easy process. But that having, that's the easiest way to implement it to start. But that's something that, we see equal value in manual modes, right? We've talked about this. I can walk into any ham shack in the world practically, and I can plug in a key or, connect the microphone, and I can communicate. So there's still a lot of value. Again, the Hurricane Maria example, right? I mean, the guys who set up emergency communications in Puerto Rico, they had a single sideband transceiver. They didn't have WinLink. They didn't have, these kinds of things to utilize. So again, manual modes have value, and I think that's something that we will address. We just haven't really, it didn't make sense to go too deep into the mechanics until we had a feeling of whether or not our stakeholders thought that this would be a good approach to take. And then that's kind of the stage we're at right now, is we're going to you guys and saying, hey, is this something you would support, and is it a good idea?
Yep, makes sense. And hopefully I wasn't too specific there beyond just throwing out some food for thought, but definitely think we're going the right way here. And thanks for the time.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Let's see. I see Mike W8MAL has his hand raised again. Mike?
I'm here. Go ahead and take care of NI6A. He was here before me.
Okay, NI6A, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I have more questions than any solutions, but can I ask a few questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, one is, say, destination stations or last mile stations. How would that apply? I know when I used to do a lot of traffic work, there were local toll calls involved, and we didn't have internet to deliver messages. But nowadays you can call long distance, coast to coast, free, most of us can anyway, or send email coast to coast. So how would that apply to most delivery messages, unless you're talking about going directly into an EOC? That's one question. I've got three more.
Okay, well, let's take them one at a time then. So yeah, obviously, the traffic world is kind of a unique animal because, number one, you're building infrastructure, right? I mean, so you're building infrastructure, which means you have to exercise it. So theoretically, we want the message to propagate through the network to its at least its destination state, right, or section. Once it gets there, the operators have flexibility as to how best to expedite delivery. Obviously for routine messages, it would be nice to have an outlet that's close to the individual who, the addressee. But obviously, I've delivered messages, 10 counties away because, well, I didn't want them to sit, right? No outlet's going to be on the net tonight, so I'll deliver it because, again, it doesn't cost anything to deliver it. Certainly you can, I've delivered messages utilizing email, and it's been highly successful. You can go, there's actually a procedure defined in the RRI practices. It explains how to do an email delivery, because in the process of delivering if you use the RRI radiogram form, it explains the whole basis and purpose of the program, and it becomes kind of a public relations, type thing. So, the idea here is that we're building a survivable network. In the process of building and maintaining a survivable network, we're building community, we're building infrastructure, and we're building survivability. The idea is to get the message via the network as close as possible to its destination. However, we don't want that process of getting as close as possible to the destination to be at the expense of the quality of customer service. So say, for example, I live in Los Angeles and I have a message for San Diego, okay? And that message arrives, I list it on, say, a net for San Diego, and there's nobody there from San Diego, okay? Then maybe I deliver it myself directly to San Diego. Because again, the idea here is that the originator has a reasonable expectation of timely delivery. Now, in a disaster operation, you might have to improvise, if it's for a served agency in particular, you might have to find some routing to make it work. But the idea here is that we're building the infrastructure.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just don't see the advantage, time-wise, to wait to get to the nearby town or even state, but that's a good answer, and thanks. The second part of that aspect is delivering a message to an EOC or a COMU, let's see, recipient, which in our state, we have a very organized method of doing it through state OES. And almost all the counties and cities prefer to interface with one POC, a personal contact for amateur radio. And that's been traditionally either Aries or COMU or RACES, previously RACES really, but also Aries RACES. How would the NTS, not the NTS, but how would the RRI, let me put it this way, would it be preferable for the RRI to interface with existing points of contact with, say, state Auxcom or state COMU?
I agree. I think the answer to that's generally yes. I mean, we see ourselves as an infrastructure provider, right? We're just one of many channels that are available. Let's say within the amateur radio service, we're one of many channels that are available. So yes, ideally, there will be overlap between RRI volunteers and the various, let's call it MCOM, volunteers, Auxcom, and commus, like you said, whatever the case might be, Aries, RACES, etc. So yes, I think that those relationships are essential, and quite frankly, I think that we hopefully will encourage some of those people to become directly involved in RRI. Again, we're not the be all and end all, right? You've got WinLink, you've got other resources, certainly plenty of government and commercial telecom resources. But if push comes to shove, and we're one of the only services that are working, well, you'll probably end up using it, right? Because you won't have other options. But yeah, so yes, we would ideally, we should all be focused on mission success. We should be working with, we want to play nice in the sandbox with
Okay,
other
actually,
organizations.
excuse me, Jim, I have a schedule, at 7 p.m. our time, Pacific time, so I've got to leave very soon. Just another question. I mean, I just feel that the interface with our emergency, say, creating relationships with our stakeholders in MCOM, at least in California, is pretty much sewn up by Aries, Races, or Commu. So we'd have to see if, I think, be best to see if we could interface RRI with those existing interfaces. And at least at this point. But let me ask about bulk welfare traffic. Being an old section traffic manager, we always failed at handling welfare traffic outgoing, which is our priority, was outgoing welfare traffic. I wouldn't say totally fail, because we didn't totally fail, but it seemed like it was a service that we could provide for residents to alleviate emotional suffering to friends, relatives, other people who didn't know the welfare of their loved ones. Obviously, that's welfare traffic, and it wouldn't be considered bulk traffic, but usually it's sent out as book messages. And a lot of people don't know how to handle book messages. Some people do, hopefully everyone does, but that's maybe wishful thinking. How would you classify outgoing welfare traffic as a priority?
Well, of course, it would be welfare traffic, and I would invite you. Have you looked at the I Am Safe program that we've developed in cooperation with the Seattle hubs and the like? That would be our model going forward, if possible. And yes, you're right. A lot of people don't know how to handle book traffic. However, that's also and of course batch messages as well, in the digital traffic network. So there's methodologies there, and this is where the training process comes in, right? But here's the other thing about welfare messages. If you're going to originate them in bulk for a community, that typically means message center, and this is where that cooperation with local MCOM and emergency management and so forth comes in. And that's kind of the way the I Am Safe program was structured. It's essentially a partnership program with local emergency management, the Seattle hubs, and there's a process that we have developed through Radio Relay International to support their program. So there is a model in place in Seattle that can be adopted in California or any other state that has been tested. It's currently in the process of being tested, and we've even developed specialized tools for delivery direct via text message when messages are sent. Welfare messages are originated via WinLink and the like. So it's a multifaceted program. I really encourage those of you to read up on that process. Now, of course, we don't have time tonight, but Steve KB1TCE and Damon Liebert, who's here, were kind of the key figures, and along with the Seattle hubs personnel, to develop that program. So we have what we believe is a forward-looking, modern model for how to handle bulk welfare message originations.
Yeah, but you need trained people in the circuit that know how to handle bulk.
JW, can I react to that for just a second? This is Jim.
Yeah.
I think we spent so much time focusing on the last mile delivery. I think it's important to understand that the vision is that these certified radio operators are not only the last mile delivery, but they're the on-ramp to bring messages into the private network or the tunnels, so to speak, that once a certified operator, RRI operator, brings a message into this private network, then it will from that point forward be handled by other certified operators. And so we will assume, perhaps wrongly, that all of those certified operators have had this higher level of training. You know, going back to the volunteer fire department, you know, we're not saying anybody who can grab a hose and put it on a campfire is a firefighter. Only the ones who've gone through the extra training. So some of these things I think will take a while, but the certified operator can also, as you've said 2 or 3 times, take those messages and have the relationships with the various served agencies or the other agencies that serve the served agencies, and again can go forward. My last comment is we've lost about 40 to 45% of the attendees, just FYI.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, Jim, you bring up a really important point that I should probably stress. We do not want to be in the local MCOM business. We've said that from the beginning. There's plenty of organizations that do that. They do it well. But we do want to play nicely in the sandbox with them. We're just another resource. And you know, I've often said this in other presentations, that just as the emergency management director is really a resource manager, the EC, the ARRL emergency coordinator, the person in charge of the Oxcom group, whomever, they are emergency communications resource managers, and they should utilize the best tool for the job at hand. And so that's what we would anticipate, is that, again, this is all about relationships. And I can tell you, success in any endeavor, but particularly in emergency management, is always predicated on prior relationships, working together ahead of the event, talking before the event, engaging in dialogue. That's the total key to success. Anyway, we need to move on because it's about 10 o'clock, and I know we have lost about half of our participants. So is there anybody else here that we need to address tonight? Question?
MAL with a brief comment, going back to W3CJD's comments, if I may.
Sure.
He touched on a couple of 3 or 4 operators in each league section, certified operators, that is. Ohio, West Virginia in the 8th region, kind of unique in that Ohio has more operators on the DTN handling West Virginia traffic than West Virginia does.
Yeah. Well, then, I won't mention any names, but there's some states out there that won't do any. They're like insular,
Right.
We won't mention names, but
the problem, I have no problem. I am one of those that are on the list handling West Virginia traffic. The problem that we run into in Ohio section, and I see that there's at least one other here that isn't active on the Ohio nets. Our cycle 2 nets meet 3 times a day. We have 8th region net in between our 1st and 2nd. And then we have our cycle 4 following our 3rd phone net. The problem is we can't move traffic to West Virginia cycle 2. Everything that we get has to go cycle 4 because they are, lack of a better term, non-existent cycle 2. So that's going to add some more strain on few operators, myself as one of the DTN operators, and to my knowledge, one of the only cycle 4 capable operator handling West Virginia traffic on the DTN out of Ohio. So that's just a concern I have from my little neck of the woods.
yeah, I understand, Mike. Like I said, I think there's going to be some challenges going forward. But, ideally, if we structure this right and we roll it out correctly, hopefully we can minimize some of those stresses on our long-term, highly dedicated volunteers like yourself, because you guys really, are the glue that, hold the program together, NTS and RRI. So, any other comments before we close for the night? Jim, is there any other chat things that need to be summarized or brought up before we shut
No,
down?
not really. And the chat's recorded and um, it's in the Zoom recording, so you can look at it later, JW.
Okay.
It was great to have as many operators that showed up tonight. That is a positive thing that we're going to take great pleasure in. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to everybody for being here. We could obviously spend more time talking about the little nitty gritty details, but obviously we've been here for a couple of hours, and it's late, particularly on the East Coast, and so I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration. I think generally speaking, at least as I see it, the response has been quite positive, and we will, like I said, we will have more of these meetings. We will probably, as we move forward, look at having maybe several meetings a year of registered radio operators along these lines, if just to kind of get better stakeholder input and better discussion and better input. So this won't be the only meeting. And again, thank you everybody for your time this evening. And I wish everybody the best, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, James, just a reminder to everyone that if there are any updates or changes that need to be made to the net schedule, the spreadsheet that everybody send them to me. My address is at the bottom of page 6.
Yeah, the net directory is our net directory is a curated document. Charles Hargrove, N2NOV, does the work. He's done a fantastic job with it, and please, if you look it over, it's on our webpage. If you need changes, I think he can take care of it, and please keep him posted on any changes or modifications that are needed. Okay, I think with that, thank you to everybody again, and RRI will be in touch. Have a good night, and best of health and so forth to everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good.
7-3.